Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Sko Show, your Colorado Buffaloes podcast on Mile High Sports. I'm Sean Drotar. That is Peyton Kraft. Peyton, look, we're going to have to. I was talking to you and our producer, Danny Bailey, before the show. I've been dreading this one all weekend because obviously, when you look at a game that goes out of hand like this one did so badly, so quickly, you start to wonder how much you can take out of it. The Buffaloes get absolutely obliterated, 53-7 in Utah. The Utes ended up just blasting them. The CU was never in this game, and I guess that's where to start, because we can look at all the things that went wrong. But I guess it's as simple as this: when you have a game that is this bad, when you just lay an egg in every discernible way, when you were outclassed by your opponent in every discernible way, sometimes the idea is let's go through all of it and see how you got from point A to point B. Sometimes you just have to go, it's one of those days, crumple up the score sheet, move on.
Right. I mean, 43-0 in the first half. Caden Salter, nothing happened really with him. Interception. He had 37 yards, 9 of 22 passing. And then, of course, you put Staub in. That was when the game was already lost, right? I think right now you just have to clean slate. I think we just throw that one away. Again, it does mean a lot in terms of where we're going to be at getting to a bowl game, but in terms of what you even look at this game, just crumble it up, toss it in the trash. Let's look forward to Arizona this week back at home.
Yeah, so some of these numbers are just comical. That first half, as you pointed out, 43-0. Needless to say, what happened in the second half was irrelevant. But the Buffaloes were outgained by more than 400 yards, which is tough to do when your opponent does not have 400 yards. They were outgained in the first half, 398 to negative 18 yards. In other words, literally, it might have been better if you didn't even show up till halftime. Still be 43-0, but you'd have no yards and you wouldn't have the turnovers. I mean, it was just an absolute disaster for the Buffaloes. Obviously, when you look at the way the reactions were, Deion Sanders basically seemed, as his board was dumbfounded, no idea how to explain something like that. 422 yards surrendered on the ground, 4 touchdowns, 151 again to a quarterback, freshman Bert Ficklin making his very first start. We knew about Devin Dampier, ended up not being able to make that, so Ficklin ends up starting. Look better than Dampier, 151 on the ground, a touchdown, the same problem the Bucs have had all year. That's the one thing I would look at and say, okay, this is a real problem. Quarterbacks continue to just run on the Buffaloes any way they want, but he also threw for another 2 touchdowns and 140 yards. It was a disaster. And for a freshman in his first start, if you're the Buffaloes, I mean, obviously you have to be better, but you have to be night and day better. This was just ridiculous. That, quite frankly, the Bucs didn't show up for this game, and they got what they deserved for doing so.
Right. And we've seen the problem with not being able to stop a quarterback that can run. We saw it in the Georgia Tech game really early in the season. We've seen it with BYU. We knew this was going to be a problem. We didn't know it was going to be this big of a problem. And me and you talked about this, Sean. What we thought we'd see is Caden Salter being able to run and Utah's defense not being able to stop him. Roles completely reversed. We were not able to stop quarterback at all for Utah. And then, like you said, from the beginning, from that first touchdown, which was within the first 3 minutes of the game, you just knew Buffs weren't there, even in the new uniforms. Nope, not there for this game.
No, I burn them. Burn the uniforms. I don't know how. I'm not sure how much I like them, but like, just forget it. That one. I mean, it can't possibly be worse. You had 140 total yards, and this was 53-7. To be totally honest, it could have been 73-7. The Buffs really could do nothing in this one. And I think to an extent, you're right. You have to just kind of crumple it up and say, not our day. You can't make too many evaluations of it. I think you do have to look at the quarterback runs, but the rest of it, it was just terrible. The Sko Show was always brought to you by Peckish, which is not terrible. And you can wash all of that out of your mouth by getting yourself some delicious wings and some pizza and some beverages. And forget about it for a little bit. 2 locations, of course, the one up in Boulder at the Hill. You love it. It's a little bit further, a couple steps further down there, but it's worth it because it's 3 times larger with all of the same menu and everything you like. Great places to watch sports. But if you haven't had a chance to be up in Boulder and figure out what Peckish is about, a preferred dining partner of CU Athletics, well, you can still take advantage of that outside of Boulder. You can come on down to the Denver Tech Center, I-25 in Bellevue, just a little hop, skip, and jump westbound. You'll be right there at the Peckish at Bellevue Station. Same thing. Obviously, the menu is the same. You want to get those wings. You want to get a boneless tenders. You can toss them all in all the sauces. I love the honey garlic, the spicy barbecue. If I'm in the mood, the liquid lava. Let's go for it. You have all of it and all the pizzas. Also down there, of course, in the tech center, you get lunch specials and happy hour specials as well. So you're thinking in between your workday or ending your workday, you can do far worse than ending up at Peckish. And if you're thinking about the games available, oh, you name it, they've got it. They have a wall of LED TVs that can be configured to show everything you can imagine. So if it's on, they've got it. Go check out Peckish, peckishco.com for the latest. Okay, whew. I feel better. Okay. And I'm thinking about food again as opposed to that game. So that helps. Peyton, the Buffs after that, they are 3-5. They've won one conference game. At a certain point, when you've won 3 out of 8, and your assignment is let's go win 3 out of our next 4, that's going to be a tough one, especially when we're looking at what just happened. So I don't think you can necessarily say bye-bye to the Bulls, but realistically, something is going to have to make a leap forward that we have not seen yet this year.
Yeah, and for me, it's changing the quarterback. I think,
Okay.
your offensive line, they weren't good. Defensive line wasn't good. One thing that you can change, and one thing the fans want to see change, is Caden Salter being replaced. I think that should have been the last game we do see Caden Salter start. One, he won't be there next year. He isn't that new face of the franchise. I get why we put Staub in at the end of that game. You want Julian Lewis to come in fresh week practicing with the team and have him have a good start. So I completely understand people were mad we didn't get to see him against Utah when we were down that much in the half. I want him to come in with a fresh set, whole week to prepare and see him in this Arizona game. And I think a lot of fans would agree with that. I think it will be a major disappointment. Again, nothing against Caden Salter, but the Buffs fans, it would be a very big disappointment to see him start this coming week.
Yeah, I don't see. I got the game got out of hand, but it got out of hand so quickly. I don't think putting in Julian Lewis helps. I mean, you're just going to have him, paddle uphill. I mean, what's the point of that? Put Staub in. Look, I'm with you at this point. I think realistically, this team is not winning 3 of its last 4 games. I don't think that's going to be the case, and so they're going to miss a bowl. If they're going to miss a bowl, you want to build momentum for next year. So again, we've talked about this all season, right? The idea that you want to go ahead and continue to. You've got a short-term goal and you've got a long-term goal. And the short-term goal was a bowl game. That isn't totally eliminated, but it's mostly gone. The longer-term goal, though, the relevancy of the Colorado football, that's still ongoing, and there's a lot to like. But one of the things that I think was really concerning in this game, before we get into Juju Payton, is Caden Salter's reaction. It was caught on air, and people noticed a couple times, saw it all over social media, that some of the calls were coming in that, quite frankly, appeared to just confuse Caden Salter entirely as to either why they were being called or the terminology, that sort of thing. Pat Shurmur, over the course of his career, I wouldn't say that the numbers have been impressive for him as an offensive coordinator. I thought in the last 3 games he had been better, but in this case, it appeared like everything was overcomplicated again. As you needed to simplify to go ahead and keep yourself in this game, it felt like things got more complicated. And not only is that not what we've seen out of Caden Salter at this point, but it makes me worry a little bit about Pat Shurmur and Juju Lewis, because if what he's calling is way too complicated for a guy who's played as many NCAA football games at whatever level you want as Caden Salter, it makes me a little nervous to hand that over to a guy who just turned 18 not that long ago and expect him to just roll with it any better than the more experienced guys that were in front of him.
Right. And Julian Lewis is the same as Caden Salter. He is that dual threat quarterback, likes to run the ball, likes to throw the ball. And if the issue is Pat Shurmur and him not letting Julian Lewis just play football the way he knows how to play, and we saw this also with the Broncos and Bo Nix, you just want to let the quarterback play and good things happen. What it looked like for CU and Caden Salter is plays were being called that didn't fit what Caden Salter knows how to do best. And what we talked about earlier last week, he needed to be able to run the ball, and we did not see that. He was holding on to the ball for a long time. He kind of scrambled, was a little hesitant almost to run the ball. And I'm not sure, you never know what the play was supposed to be when it was called, but it looked like they were trying to get passing yards, and it just wasn't clicking for the offense, and it never changed. No wide receivers were open, and then we really never saw Caden Salter run the ball like we wanted to.
Yeah, 14 carries for -4 yards. That's a little different, of course, because sacks in college come off the rushing yards, not the passing yards. So it's a little bit different statistically if you're accustomed to that. You're wondering how can he get -4 yards on 14 carries? Sacks are involved in that, and that has to be better too. So that's I guess that's the question. Again, that's probably more of an offseason question. I don't think you're going to just remove Pat Shurmur from that role for the remaining 4 games. I don't think that's particularly valuable, especially if you're going to put Julian Lewis in. Lewis has worked with this offense. You can quibble with it as much as you'd like, but you're not going to all of a sudden tell Julian Lewis, oh, by the way, get in. We have a new offensive coordinator, new play caller, new guy in your ear. Good luck, kids. So you've kind of got what you've got. And that's something that's interesting to me. I am at this point with you. I think we've been pretty consistent upon that. You wanted to see if you could work your way back to 500, and if you didn't, it's probably time to get Caden Salter out and get Julian Lewis in there. In part because we talked about those larger goals, right? Keeping CU football relevant. Julian Lewis was the #1 quarterback prospect coming out of high school last year. So every time that player in any university, when they're in the Power Four, gets involved, that gets you attention, whether the team's good, bad, or indifferent. For the Buffaloes, we know that they're not all that good at this point, but you bring Lewis in, you are on FS1. It's another primetime game, 5 p.m. kickoff for Colorado, the homecoming game here against Arizona. And already the game after that against West Virginia is also national on TNT. That will be a noon start in Morgantown, 10 a.m. here in Colorado. But part of this, even when you're losing, is keep the Buffs front of mind. That helps in recruiting. That helps in NIL. That helps in all those ways. It is not great to be able to look at that quarterback position, Peyton, and say some of the quarterback decisions we have to make are based on the future of the program and its availability to get eyeballs and dollars. But the reality is the programs that don't do that end up finding themselves in a lot of trouble.
Right. And especially when you talk about Julian Lewis, a highly recruited guy out of high school, if you don't start him and if the eyes start to go away, the money, the NIL deals start to go away, Julian Lewis is going to follow that money. I mean, that's just how college football has turned out. You don't want to say that. You don't want him to leave just because you're a bad football team. But when NIL money goes away, you lose your players. And that can happen not just with Julian Lewis, with your offensive line, your defensive line, your star wide receivers, anybody, but Julian Lewis in particular. So I think putting him up against Arizona gets the eyes back on CU. Now, again, we're focusing on the future. They still could win 3 of the 4 games. I don't think it's likely, so it still could happen. But I think the eyes need to stay on CU. And the only way to do that is to throw Julian Lewis in there and give people hope for what's to come next year.
Yeah, I think it's probably that time. I think it really is. And that part of this is really fascinating because I think you are throwing him in a situation where right now, at least, it's not particularly good. And for the Buffs, it depends on what you'll get out of it. But yeah, I think the keeping the eyeballs here is important. As you put out, keeping Julian Lewis here is important. And at a certain stage, whether he's ready or not, we know the season is starting to go the wrong direction. So if you don't go to the kid now, he's realistically going to look in the mirror and go, well, when are they then? When are they going to go to me? We've tried Salter. It didn't work. We've tried Staub. It didn't work. I'm supposed to be the guy of the future. When are they going to go to me? You're exactly right. This is even more than just the idea of getting the national TV game so people can stay in tune with the Buffaloes across the country. But you also have to retain Julian Lewis. And I do think that's a really important point you're making, Peyton. The last 4 games of the season might be about, is Julian Lewis going to stay? And if so, what does he need to see? Any idea on what that might be? Because he can't control the wins and losses all by himself. Is the idea maybe showing faith? Is the idea tweaking what the offense is doing? Or is the idea hoping that just making a change gives enough of a spark that maybe they steal a game or 2 here? And even if they don't make a bowl, you get a couple wins under your belt and get ready to come back for 2026.
Right. I think it's mainly just making a change. Again, you still have a difficult schedule. You play ASU. Arizona's been really close against some really good teams, BYU, Houston. They're coming off a bye week. So I don't think it's about getting the wins. I think it's maintaining the Buffs fans, maintaining the money, getting Julian Lewis in there, and just getting people hope for next year. And if the wins come along with that, that's great. But for Coach Prime, what he needs to set in Julian Lewis's mind is, you know what? If we win, that's great, but I want you to start to feel comfortable with this offense, start to feel comfortable with Pat Shurmur and calling the plays. It's really just about making Julian Lewis feel comfortable enough that he wants to stay and make this his team that he's going to hopefully lead far next year.
Yeah, obviously for the Buffs, a tough loss. Pretty difficult to figure out what to do with it. But yeah, it does feel like it's time. I think the idea for the homecoming game, the national TV game, the primetime game, it's probably time to just say it like, hey, Julian Lewis, it's his time. He's the starting quarterback. Let's go. He's going to have to take some lumps here and there. We know that's going to be the case. He's not going to step in and set the world on fire, but you have to be able to learn and you have to go out there and do it. And what better place to do it? They get back at Folsom Field with a raucous crowd behind you. I agree completely. They need to get a little more help for him, obviously. Julian Lewis is not going to fix everything. But for the last 4 games of this year, let's say, hypothetically, if they go to a bowl, it's great. Let's say, hypothetically, they lose 3 of 4. If Lewis looks okay, are you worried about how the fan base perceives it? Will they be ready to just jump right back in 2026 and say, hey, rebuilding year, you lost the Heisman Trophy winner, you lost Shedeur Sanders, 2 guys whose numbers are up on the facade in Folsom Field. Of course, it was going to be a rebuilding year, but we still got our guy at quarterback and we can live with it? Or do you feel like some people are going to maybe jump off the bandwagon when this team takes one step back?
Yeah, and I think that's going to be an issue. Obviously, when Coach Prime first got hired, it was Coach Prime, it was Shedeur, it was Travis, and now you've taken a step back. And even if you start Julian Lewis and you have him next year as your starting quarterback, you lose that bandwagon fans, so to say. Of course, you're going to have the alum of CU like me, but I think you're going to lose a little bit of that kind of emotion and what pulls people to see you. What could help that is, of course, recruiting and the transfer portal, which Coach Prime has been great at. I think his health in the past has kind of stopped him a little bit from recruiting as much as he probably wanted to, but he still has brought some great guys into CU, and hopefully his health continues to get better and he's right back in the process. But you are going to lose a little bit. Also, the Big 12 is just really good. So, you know, you don't have that. So that's the other thing. You don't have that hope that, oh no, we could potentially get to that Big 12 game. It's gonna be a long ride up to getting to the Big 12 championships next year, just because of the talent you're starting to see with Utah, with BYU, with ASU. You just have a lot of teams that are starting to be in that top 25 conversation. So it's just harder to make a name for yourself when you're starting pretty much at the bottom beside your quarterback.
Yeah, and look, they're not going anywhere. This is a Power 4 conference. They're going to stay strong. They're going to be strong. The Buffs have to build. They're going to have a lot of turnover after this year as well. Now, every team does that, and that's why you're happy you have Coach Prime who can bring in some talent who can do that. But in the end, it really was, and this is the interesting part when Deion Sanders came in. I talked about this for a long time on my radio program and over at Mile High Sports Today. Deion Sanders was your shortcut if you're the Buffs. He took you from being a one-win program to instantly relevant. Instantly relevant. All your games are on national TV. And that's great. The Q rating, the recognition is valuable. You couldn't pay for that kind of advertising that you got. But eventually, it was always going to boil down to the games. It was always going to boil down to wins and losses. I don't think they're there yet. I think that's a next year thing. I think next year, Julian Lewis sticks around. Coach Prime maybe makes a couple changes here on his coaching staff. You bring in new talent, but it was always going to come down to wins and losses. Coach Prime's ability to recruit and take advantage of the NIL portal is a massive advantage. But now it just can't be, we're going to show Deion Sanders, we're going to show Coach Prime, and the Buffs are going to be compelling. Now at this point, it's not new. You have to start winning football games. They have a grace period here, but I think you're exactly right. It is time to get Julian Lewis in. And if they don't, you start to wonder how interested the big networks will be in the Buffs if they're not winning and they're not compelling. You have to be one or the other. They've been compelling the whole time. They were winning last year. They're still compelling, but it's fallen off. The best way to be compelling, put the kid from Carrollton, Georgia in.
Right. And one point I want to make is, they're back at home against Arizona this week. Then you go on the road against West Virginia, and then you're back at home against ASU. So you want Julian Lewis, to start when you're at home. You have the fans there, you have people supporting you behind it. It's just an easier way to introduce a new quarterback into the game. So you want to either do it against Arizona and ASU. And if I'm going to pick the team that I want to be introduced into, it's against Arizona. ASU, they've struggled in the past couple weeks, but they're still one of those top 25 teams that kind of jump in and out. You want to start against a team that is still struggling too. They haven't quite figured it out like ASU has done, and you want it to be at home. So I think if you're going to make the jump, it has to be this week, because starting Julian Lewis against Arizona State may look just like it has looked against Utah.
It might, but there'll be a lot more buzz, a lot more enthusiasm, a lot more excitement when it comes to Boulder on Saturday. And it's important to bring that excitement back, especially a week after this disheartening, this disastrous loss. Want to thank our friends at Peckish for all of their support. Of course, they're the reason that we have the Sko Show, and come visit them. By the way, as we mentioned, 2 locations, Boulder and Greenwood Village. Go check them out in the DTC, I-25 and Bellevue. Right off of there, go ahead, grab those lunch specials. Go ahead and grab that happy hour. Go ahead and check it out on a Thursday when Nate Lundy's out there doing You Bet Tonight live in front of Thursday Night Football. Always something to do at Peckish. A lot of fun things going on, obviously, down there in the Tech Center. All of the wings, all of the pizza, everything you expect, all of the fun. We're so delighted to be there. I'm finding myself there every week, regardless, because I just like me some wings, Peyton, and that's my spot to go. I think when you get there, preferred partner of CU Athletics, you'll find out why that's the case, and you will feel like it too. So, okay. So let's get some wings, get a beverage, wash this taste out of your mouth. It's over, okay? Utah's done. Don't have to deal with them for next year. All about, we're going to do Bill Belichick. It's on to Arizona, okay? That's the plan. On to Arizona. Hopefully Julian Lewis gets the start. We'll find out later in the week, and we'll keep you updated on all of it right here on the Sko Show. Peyton, thanks as always for the time. Truly appreciate it. We'll catch you next time. And as always, Sko Buffs.
Go Buffs.